Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all our live listeners, and welcome to everybody who's listening on the repeat. As you find us on YouTube at any time of day or night, Spotify, and elsewhere. Today, we're looking back over the past 2 weeks. There's been so much AI news, and three major themes in our coverage of AI come into focus. One, in this year of the agent, agentic AI is disrupting commerce and vertical software. We had shows on each of those. The second major theme is next generation cognitive architectures in LLMs and AI, from chain of thought to lived experience. And the third is the conundrum of ethics and governance at the AGI tipping point. So let me just dive a little deeper into each one of those and explain how those fit together in the progression towards AGI and in just the general progression of AI as it advances. The first one is that first theme, agentic execution, and all of the things that are being delivered as we observe them that empower LLMs and AI in the hands of humans to accomplish things on their own, puts real economic weight behind AI, turning models into market actors. In cognitive advances, that second theme, this supplies the reasoning and the depth and the adaptive learning that allows those agents to operate safely and creatively in open-ended tasks. And then finally, as these very powerful capabilities come into view, what must rise in parallel to that is a lot of governance and ethical consideration in order to channel the power that's being unlocked by those other two themes towards broadly shared benefit rather than concentrated risks and concentrated wealth. And all of those issues have come into play as we've had these discussions in the last couple of weeks. So with that introduction, I turn it over to my colleagues. Today on the show, I'm joined by Beth Lyons, Jyunmi Hatcher, and Brian Masseri. And here we go, off to the races. Who has something to contribute to something that's retrospective to the last 2 weeks and or progressive from where we covered those subjects to what's emerged overnight as we come on to the show today?
That's true. If you hadn't heard that OpenAI is going to have a big developer-related announcement right after our show, so watch our show and then go over to OpenAI for that live stream. But what I wanted to kind of follow up with was there was a couple of stories that came out this morning, and I'm following up on TechCrunch on these. Is when we did our news day on Wednesday, one of the stories was that the Harvey AI service, right? It's catered towards the legal profession and offering AI empowered legal services and support and things like that. It's probably the biggest name in that space because it was funded partially by an OpenAI funding arm. And so there was a lot of buzz about them, and they've been making great progress. So much so that on Wednesday we talked about that now they're opening up the models that would help generate or power their services to beyond the OpenAI models. They were going to bring in Google and Anthropic models, right, to help with that. And now, today, we're finding out that just on the heels of that, they're starting a $250 million series to raise more money at an valuation at $5 billion. So they're rolling forward strong on the legal side of things, which is also interesting because there's a related story coming from Anthropic. Just as they're being added, their models are being added to Harvey. Is Anthropic's corporate lawyer just got cited for using an erroneous citation created buy the chatbot for their ongoing legal battle with music publishers in California and things like that. So, admittedly, the error is just the name and the publication or the authors and the titling of the citation, not the actual, as far as I know, not the actual citation itself or the relevant information of it. And of course, they just said, "Oh, hey, this was just a mistake on their side and not, not malicious or anything like that." But I thought it was an interesting development in how both sides, with legal focused AI, is progressing. They definitely want to keep building it out. They want to build out Harvey, give it more capabilities by adding more models. But one of the models they added just got caught into a little bit of a legal snafu themselves. So something to watch. And if you didn't know, Harvey AI, the name Harvey, is from a famous movie back in the day where it was an imaginary rabbit best friend for a lawyer, right? So that's where the assistant AI invisible
Very
friend
interesting.
concept comes from. All right. What do
Yeah,
you guys
my
got?
observation on that. Yeah, thanks for that story. My observation is that there were early on in 2023, there were some very competent legal AI platforms. And now at that time, they had their own independent training routines. They were training on legal documents primarily. And meanwhile, you might have expected that that would have created a whole branch that wouldn't really intersect with or marry up with the reasoning models and the more capable LLMs that are being developed by the frontier model developers, Anthropic, OpenAI, etc. But what this announcement suggests to me is that there's going to be these merges of capabilities. You're going to have the interactive thinking model alongside a very large collection of super fine-tuned training around a specific domain like legal. And the combination of those is going to be more competent than what any one person could do by, or a company could do by just focusing on the subject domain. Okay, who's next? Okay, I'm going to call on someone if someone doesn't bring something up.
I think, I don't know what the OpenAI announcement will be today, but my assumption is that it'll be about MCP, which I think will be really interesting. Model Context Protocol was developed by Anthropic. Google has since come out with A2A or agent to agent. These are rightfully so getting a lot of buzz. We've talked about them on the show several times. OpenAI had already come out and publicly said they like MCP. They want to develop with MCP. But I think what we might see today is actually an announcement showing the connectors and what the potential would be for developers. I don't know how much this will affect the day-to-day users on ChatGPT, but it's huge, obviously, for enterprise. If this is sort of the prevailing way that sort of is the predecessor to or the successor to rather like your sort of API connectors, we've demonstrated on just simple N8N workflows what that could mean and how it basically simplifies the process. And we don't have to get into it now, but I would suspect that's probably what they might talk about, which would be really interesting to me. They've sort of shown their hand here a little bit. There are some leaks out there that are showing some screen grabs, believe them, don't believe them, but people showing where the connectors are to simple things like Google. If you just look at what they've done recently, OpenAI just came out, they'd already connected, and I use it with Scaled all the time to connect directly to our Google Drive for Scaled. And so I can ask questions directly in ChatGPT through our Teams instance to any document that we have set up through that protocol and that connector. Well, they just came out with both SharePoint and GitHub. Notion will probably be soon after that. Slack will be soon after that, right? So we're already seeing these connectors line up. And what I think is you're about to see the door open up with MCP that allows the builders, obviously, to have the confidence that a main player like OpenAI is saying, this is, we've given this the hum and we think this is the protocol going forward for at least now, which really, that's a huge thing for developers. And that really gives the confidence of people to dive in and actually put resources and time and money towards building out those actual MCP connectors. I also just think, Karl, you brought it up on the Slack channel yesterday. I don't think it's any coincidence that 4.1 showed up inside of ChatGPT. I've been using 4.1 now for weeks through the API. It is a phenomenal model. 1 million context window makes a huge difference. It actually puts it on par with Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro, in my opinion, just my opinion on that. So seeing 4.1 get rolled in and maybe become the default GPT inside of, or model inside of ChatGPT, to me, this all lines up really well together. And so it'll be interesting to see what they say today. But I feel like this is sort of that next step that we've all been talking and hinting around and stuff like that, and could be really, really big deal for developers today, depending on if that's what it is.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
that's-
I agree with that.
I don't actually think that's what it's going to be today, because if
You're
you see
wrong.
some, we're looking at like an SWE agent. So I'm more excited. I'm like, oh, if it's a model context protocol, I'm like, okay, that's great. Which it's actually not bad, but I think like the big hype is Codex software engineering agent, and you see the little software engineering agent like that, to me, more crazier. But on your point though of model context protocol, I don't know if you've looked in your ChatGPT where you have deep research and connecting to Dropbox and SharePoint. I don't know if you've seen that already in your deep research. And obviously GitHub is there too. But I think like that, so many clients have asked us, it's like, yeah, that's great that it can search the web. Can it go into my files? And there's always the hesitancy about the data and the security about that.
Mhm.
So yesterday we were doing a training with the Calgary Police cyber crimes, and that SharePoint thing came up, and the IT guy was there, and he's like, what does that connect to? It's like, oh, your SharePoint. He's like, do you mean like 365 SharePoint? I'm like, yeah. Check this out. And he like looks over. He's like, do not connect that to our SharePoint. Don't do that. Everybody laughed because like you could see some people already starting to connect it. And I'm like, they're like, that guy, like he's literally telling like, don't do it. Cause he was like totally panicking there about like, if you can connect deep research to your SharePoint, to an Office 365 SharePoint, and if they've built it out, that's crazy. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny when he's like, do not connect.
Quick point, because I want to hear what Jimmy and Andy were about to say too, but quick point on that. I will only say this from the Google side. Wow, what a process to connect the Google side and get all the way through row level security. It took me and my coworker, Erica, an hour of sharing the screen and going through. Now, thank God OpenAI put out very detailed directions on it, and going into the Google console, which, Jimmy, we've done several times for the show, but it was not straightforward. I mean, it was not straightforward, and I feel pretty confident in some of those areas, and to get it right. So what I would just say to that, Karl, is I don't believe that anybody would just simply, if you're just a worker, unless you had admin rights, I don't believe anybody will just be able to connect and things will go crazy, because I saw what had to happen from our admin side and what needed to be approved, all the way down to the file, the folder, and so on and so forth. So anyway, that's the way it should be, by the way. I mean, there should be no blanket connectors to any of this stuff. Everything should have to be approved so that OpenAI can only ever, per user, get connections to and look at documents that they already have access to on the other side. So if I don't have HR access to certain files and documents in our Google Drive for scaled, which I don't, I shouldn't, right? I cannot ask questions against those unless somebody messed that up in the connection settings on the OpenAI. So just want to put that out there so there's no like crazy fear about this. Like, it is pretty locked down, and you would imagine that's exactly what they have to do to get.
I don't know, because I saw one person like go through the OAuth process.
Yeah, maybe SharePoint's different.
And
Yeah.
and I was like, And you're right, though. You're like, hold on a second. If this guy can just connect to anything, I think now I don't know if it's like the only SharePoint sites that I have permissions to. You're right. I don't think they would just be like connect to any SharePoint site, like the Chiefs SharePoint site versus like your SharePoint. I don't think so, but like, but the IT guy was kind of like totally. You could see the stress on his face,
as they should, right? Yeah, Jimmy's like, yes, they should definitely be wary of this.
But SharePoint provides a role-based security against all the data in the SharePoint collections. So you can connect to SharePoint, but it depends on who it is who's connecting to SharePoint, what you can actually see in SharePoint. So I think he wants to verify that, I'm sure, that it doesn't somehow bypass SharePoint security. But SharePoint is a secure layer on corporate data already. So I think it's going to be okay. Anyway, ask him about that, Karl. Check that out. Now, what I wanted to comment on is that we're talking about MCP, which is focused on agent to tool communication, like accessing APIs or databases. But there are two other main protocols, one brand new that was just announced in the last few days that I want to talk about, in addition to what Brian mentioned, which is the agent to agent protocol, which is about how do agents talk to other agents and collaborate and delegate to other agents some subtask that they've been managing at the sort of the super agent orchestration layer. So you've got MCP that allows any agent to access tools and services out there like databases and or what I'll call feature servers in the old parlance. It's just some service out there, originally available via API, now available via MCP, that provides a feature or a function that you might find useful either in an agentic exploration or deep research, or in an application, and you want to access that. So that's the MCP role in this agent architecture. There's a new one called AG-UI for Agent User Interaction Protocol. And it's a new open standard designed to bridge AI agents with user-facing applications. So it's the communications model for how, if an agent comes in and wants to talk to the user, and some examples of that would be like, okay, in real-time coding applications like Cursor, you want the sub-agents to be able to communicate to the user, interrupt what the user is doing, and ask for a co-edit, kind of action by the human user. This protocol enables that. Or in a customer support chat bot, where you just want the agent to report back to the user what it's doing. Oh, I'm searching the inventory now. Okay, that's this new protocol is the one that manages that communication from the agent to the UI, so that the company that's developing the application has a natural standardized protocol for how to ask for and receive and either accept or reject a communication from the agent into the UI for presentation to the user. So this is also important to human approvals. So if you want to have the agent ask for permission to proceed on a certain thing, this is the protocol that manages that. So then the last one, the one that Brian mentioned, is agent to agent, this delegation part. So the three of these protocols, and there's probably more to come, they're kind of working together to enable agents to move smoothly around the world, the digital world, and invite the collaboration of other agents through agent to agent to access tools like a web search and or, like, say, the weather, and or a map, all of those things through MCP. And more importantly, how do I as an agent talk to the application UI? And that's this new AG-UI, agent to user interface protocol. So just wanted to toss that in there.
I thought that A to A might or at least OpenAI's A2A might be part of that, or part of that discussion if we're going down the line of the MCP. But my red string theory on this is from their little announcement that says, or if you want to learn to be a developer, that this is a integration or implementation of their recent windsurf deal. So they may have been building the whole windsurf ecosystem into OpenAI, into the OpenAI ecosystem, and now we've found out about the purchase deal. And so there was some news today about windsurf also releasing their own AIs. So they might be continuing to develop along those line of things. So
interesting.
And they remember,
that's kind of what I'm drawing from the the red strings of fate there.
And remember, a couple of weeks ago, they opened their academy, or their education wing, which I think was called Academy, but don't quote me on that. But it could be like tied in again with, hey, remember we have this here as well, so we're going to teach you how to use it. I think it'll be really interesting. I want to weave a little bit to our conversation about shopping and referencing that OpenAI added shopping. But what we've said on the show is Perplexity had it, but it didn't really do anything, so they didn't emphasize it anymore. That's no longer true. They've done a UI upgrade, and now it's prominent on the left side, your purchases and your travel arrangements. I don't remember if that's called reservations or not, but it's a picture of a plane, so or an icon of a plane. So I think that definitely hasn't gone away. I think they're trying to figure out what the UI is that is helpful, but not in the way. Personally, I don't think they've achieved that yet. Keep working on it, Perplexity, because that voice chat experience where it's just showing me a big ad and a little tiny voice thing, not happy with it. But I do think that we're moving in the direction more and more to see how to integrate purchases. I wonder if anybody else has had that experience.
Well, let me just mention that in Perplexity, on that left nav panel over there, they have, in addition to shopping, they have travel. And on mine, it doesn't look like an airplane. It's like a little circle with an arrow in it. But it also has finance. So if you want to, explore stocks and or financial questions, there's a separate UI that's now been developed for that. So you've got 3 options there: finance,
Nice.
travel, and shopping.
And you're right. And if I remember, like you can't opt out of sports or finance. Like, oh, we're showing you your Tacoma Park teams. Not mine. No, right? Like,
I don't see sports on mine.
oh, that's interesting. All right.
So I've opted out, apparently.
I
They know
I've,
that I know.
I just
They
have
know that
finance,
I know
travel,
nothing
sports.
about sports.
I've turned on a setting now that I must go find. It'd be really nice to Perplexity. This is a rant that we do periodically. I would like self-aware AI. I would like you to train on how to use your system, because I want to ask you how to opt out of Perplexity Sports.
Oh,
All right.
I actually now see, just not worth sharing this, but there's there's a plus sign up at the top left, which is where you add a new Perplexity query. Then there's, at the home base, there's these 3 top level things: finance, travel, and shopping. But if you go down on the left to discover, there you get tech and science, finance, arts and culture, sports and entertainment. So there, sports is underneath that menu, discover.
That's always been there. That's like the news feed of theirs. So that to me is like Google's homepage with news and stuff like that. It's curated stories from sports, finance, all those things. Because to me, that's like their version of their newspaper homepage. But the finance, travel, and shopping, that's a decidedly different feel to it. If you go over to travel, it feels more like an Airbnb, which is ironic because Airbnb just came out with their huge AI push and rebranded their website. And so they want you to basically, they're going after TripAdvisor and Travelocity and places like that, where not only are you now booking stays and can find out how to stay in a yurt in your hometown, which, I mean, important, but also what's the local food booking experience that I can do along with my yurt stay that perfectly encapsulates my Swedish desires for food or whatever. That's not what a yurt is, but it's the first initial I come up with. So like, I mean, Airbnb has kind of been like, hey, and they've tried this before, by the way, in 2023. So like with AI though, this is getting easier and easier to have that customized user experience. And I will just say, if we go all the way up to the 10,000 view, this brings me back to what Greg said way earlier, like 3 minutes into the show, which was like, I sat on a discussion around LLMs are dead end. They are a dead end, and they can never evolve into AGI, which, Karl, you've talked about Jan LeCun, who has been talking about that. But we've just sat here and talked about advances from Perplexity and OpenAI and MCP and A and the other one that you just mentioned, Andy, that could be a protocol. We've talked about the shopping experience. We talked about all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, I get that maybe an LLM itself is a dead end to AGI, but didn't we just discuss all the ways that LLMs will connect in a larger, broader, stronger, smarter network of agents that do bridge the gap to potential AGI? Or is it that only we're saying one model has to be smart enough to be AGI? Because I didn't really think that was a qualifier. I could be wrong. But to me, when I think about AGI, I'm like, no, LLMs aren't a dead end. They're just one piece of a much larger puzzle that we're putting together. And there will be, in extremely, as we said, smart, intelligent, niche, lawyer-facing LLMs that only do that. But when you take that, and that agent can talk to any other agent, and any LLM can call through MCP and talk with the same tools to any other expertise agent collectively, doesn't that give you something that feels very much like an AGI? I don't know.
Or is it even important that it won't ever reach AGI?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We talked about that too. Is it even important that we reach it? Right. Yeah, exactly.
And conversations like that, I think, are something that the AI bubble is not really understanding enough, because I'm also in chats similar like that. And when you see stories like the Harvey story of the miscited, right, made up citations, there were hallucinations in the footnotes, those kinds of things. What I see is people saying, and that's why this is a hoax, a fake technology, will never master anything. And honestly, that's like saying dogs pull on leashes and therefore they will never be pets, right? Because everyone will be frustrated. You can teach people how to use the leash in a way that the dog no longer pulls, right? Like it isn't an error in the technology, it's an error in the human's understanding of the technology and how to use it appropriately. And you should never submit citations without checking them in your legal briefs when AI writes it. You shouldn't do that when you're the lawyer's assistant. What is it called? Paralegal. Your paralegal is checking, right? Like there's a ton. That's just like. But I do think there's a level of confirmation bias when people hear that. It reinforces for them this is not something they have to pay attention to. It's upsetting. It's not going to work. People are blinded.
Yeah.
And
so I think to your point, Brian, imagine an agent that has been given access to all these protocols and has a wide-ranging access to many, many different things. And its task is to solve the ARC AGI benchmark. Can that one perform at the test level that's required? I think it's 70% or something. Can it achieve a 70% score on the ARC AGI benchmark? And I think it's more likely that an agent that has no limit on its just as a human would, have no limit on how much time and brain power it can invest in achieving general intelligence, it can go out and collect all of the necessary resources, including subagents through the agent-to-agent protocol, to assist in solving the thing. Then doesn't there exist in this collective approach an artificial general intelligence that can surpass humans? A fascinating idea. And
that's what I think it's going to be. And I also think, by the way, I've said this before on the show, I also think that's the end of hallucinations. I think that's the end of false citations, because once you get to a level where any agent can validate, I've talked about it being to me, it's a blockchain type solution, right? But when you have independent agents that across the board are validating the same way we think about blockchain today, where it's decentralized and coming back, I find it very odd to think of having hallucinations on any one deep research answer, because it would have been validated 20 times to Sunday from all different angles. And if one was definitely away from the rest, it's like your spaghetti models for a hurricane. Sure, one of them goes wide right, but every other one is starting to track in this general direction. I think that is the actual end to hallucination. Not that any one model wouldn't hallucinate. Of course it will. I still think we're going to have issues with models trying to overplease the end user. But if you broaden out, and now you're not really talking to a model, but you're talking to a master agent that has connectors to all the specialized models, that should stop happening. That's just my opinion, my belief. I don't know. We'll see, I guess, but that's where I think this is going.
Yeah, and Beth, to your point, what you're arguing really is that humans are applying an arbitrary constraint on what we have as our notion of the dog on the leash, right? We want a leashed AGI. We don't want, and that'll only when the AGI performs on its leash will we say it has artificial general intelligence. But if we unleash that AGI through agentic collaboration, agent to agent, doesn't it already then, maybe not in one single AI entity, but in the collective entity? And then we can spin out in this conversation on, singularity. Now they can talk to each other, they can learn from each other. And now what happens when they collaborate or collude in pursuit of an unknown and unaligned objective?
Yeah.
Well, let's not go there.
Well, and again, I feel like this comes to a place where we really want people to have a deep understanding of the functions, because the very first Salesforce AI that was put in was allowing you to do a natural language query with your database. Technically, that's AI, right? Like I can say, show me the people that I talked to on Thursday. Pull everybody that I talked to on Thursday, right? And it can infer some things from that and pull some records. That is an AI translation from my natural language to my actual database. But it's not hallucinating who's in the database, because that's actual function. That's software. That has nothing to do with AI making probability probability predictions about what the records are, right? And I feel like when we talk about this, we're in a place where it's now so embedded in the AI, we're not understanding when it's like, hey, this sounds good, right? This sounds like an excellent article because I did the reasoning the AI did the reasoning entirely with AI. So this is a probable response, versus the AI, use my ability to code and launch functions or access functions, right? That's what a code interpreter is when it actually interprets the data, right? It's a Python function, or it's a function that it is creating that does that. And I think that again is a misunderstanding. That people don't understand the distinction between that. The first one has a super high hallucination rate. The second one is a little lower in its hallucination rate, and you'd need to prove them differently, actually. or go about fixing them.
Okay, we're just passing the 30-minute mark now. So maybe let's take a detour away from the main themes that we've looked at over the past several weeks. And one of them, by the way, is this profound question of what happens with AGI by 2027. That's the AI-2027 playground that we invited you all to go take a look at, which has some positive and negative scenario outcomes. Very, very interesting. But there's bubbling news behind the scenes here now, especially with OpenAI. Immediately, like within the next 25 minutes or so, is going to start a live stream to announce whatever it is that they're doing. We've speculated on this show about it being MCP. But are there other news or development related things that have emerged since our even Wednesday show, a couple of days ago, that we weren't able to cover or that have come about since then?
I missed Wednesday's show, obviously. I wasn't there, but did you guys happen to mention about the Spotify DJ update? Did that come up at all?
I don't know.
No, we didn't bring that one up.
So the only reason I bring that up, Andy, is because you were just talking about AI 2027. And although a little silly, one of the things that AI 2027 does is it gives you an option to choose your own ending, right? They have two, right? They have two. And I have talked over and over and over again about how one of my absolute favorite types of books as a child was choose your own adventure books. I've built over the years, which is weird to say with AI, but over the last 2 years, I built several iterations of a GPT that is basically choose your adventure. Even though my daughter is now 14, I have sat with her and we've done choose your own adventures using AI before. I find them endlessly fascinating. I talked about at one point, I said, I long for the day in your car where you can just have the choose your own adventure in the car through the speaker in the car. I think this is like the next 2025 evolution of the long car ride, from Georgia to New York, like we used to do when I was a kid. It was a 13+ hour drive, from Atlanta up to where our family was in New York. Back in the day, my brother and I would both have a cooler in front of us. We would get 10 new packs of Topps or Fleer baseball cards, in 1987, 1988 edition, and do a whole lot of have it, got it, need it, have it, got it, need it, have it, and then 17 stacks of bubble gum. That's how we got along through a car ride in the 80s. And then, my buddies for the first time had their dad, they were also going to New York, and their dad wired up the Nintendo NES system, blew us away on a 13-inch screen in the back of a van. We thought, well, this is the future. You guys can play Nintendo on the way to New York. We're like, it doesn't get better than this. So now here we are in 2025, and I think about the kids of today, and I go, my daughter's a little bit older now. She's fine in the back of the car if we take a long ride. But when she was younger, you're a parent, you're trying to get through it. And so you hear what Spotify is doing. And the reason I bring it up is their DJ is now interactive. You can now ask questions against it and get the DJ to adjust. And that might just be through the phone, but that would work through Apple CarPlay as well. And so if the DJ comes back, I can actually now talk to it and say, oh, no, only give me songs from the 90s. I like this list, but only give me songs from the 90s, which I love. But to what that tells me is, how far away are we from choose your own adventure in the car? Because I feel like all the pieces and parts are coming together. And although it doesn't really have anything to do with AI 2027, my 2027 is taking long car rides and knowing that I can have fully interactive AI adventures in the cars with my family or kids or anything.
Build it, Brian. Build it.
Well,
you can build it now. There's the tools. Could totally build it. We've got the voice audio interface, can create an avatar. All you got to do is connect it through your mobile network. I don't know. I see another $1 million idea here for long, story time. It's story time for long car rides. I like it.
Yeah.
You could do it. You could do it now with ChatGPT as a custom GPT or advanced voice. The problem is how frustrating it is when it's like, oh, sorry, right? Like, buffering problem, like, it's like,
And I wanted to we talked about this on the show, right? Geolocation. Didn't we just talk about that where were we just yesterday? We were talking, I must have been, I was only on yesterday's show, but we were talking about geolocation being part of helping or killing sales. And I was talking about Andy, we were talking about, and you're like, in your example, Brian, I'm walking down the street and it knows my geolocation. So it's like, don't you want that burger? You know, that's right around the corner. It's about lunchtime and we know you've had that burger before, right? So I think there's like the upside of geolocation. There's obviously the downside from the privacy. However, with something like this in a car, that actually is kind of fun. Because what if you're doing the choose your own adventure story and it's about dragons and something mythical, but it knows what's at the next exit. And it could be like, you're coming up on a break. You're going to need
now
gas.
it becomes a treasure hunt, right?
Legend has it. Dinosaurs used to roam. See if you can find the da-da-da. Now you've got stores that are in on it. And they've got things that are sort of geolocation, stuff like that. Can you imagine a kid being like, go to the gas station, go to the gas station. That's where the dinosaur bone is or whatever. Like there's some really big potential here that, again, as data comes together.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like, can you just imagine it's like, all right, kids, we're a traveling band of adventurers. We need to get our next mission from the Burger King.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then we can we hit the QRC code at the Burger King that gives us our next adventure, and then you're continuing on your trip, and then they know that you have to like you said, find the dragon or whatever, and then there's some place that
I don't know what Burger King's version of the Happy Meal is, but it's kind of that, right? If you're in the latter form, we talked about sales yesterday. If you're in the latter sides of AI marketing and sales, think about the integrations to that. The story is now bringing in things. The kid knows if I get the Happy Meal with the special QR code or whatever, they put the dinosaur in there. It's the blue dinosaur. That's part of the story. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole it's a whole expansion to an ARG thing, right? So
what's
if
it?
You
ARG?
Basically this augmented campaign around whatever significant thing. So it was famous for movies like Cloverfield did a whole big ARG campaign to get you, into, this is a reality kind of thing. So it's a bigger game, right?
Okay, what I love about this idea, and just Brian, your general idea of having an interactive thing that you can engage in AI with, that takes people away from screens. Like I would like us to invent the $1 million idea that is an application of AI that maybe is powered by the phone, but is more likely integrated with geospatial and voice interaction than it is with looking down at your freaking cell phone.
And people just said in the comments, this is Pokemon Go, right?
I was about to say, it's like, okay, we're an advanced version of Pokemon Go for sure.
Yeah. But it could be something that is it could be something that is sponsored by different you could have different influencers create the journeys, right? So I'm not a history buff, but if I were, like, okay, here's the journey going down 95, right, on the East Coast. We're just going to do those things. Somebody else is like, okay, these are the things that are loosely related to Taylor Swift. We're going to do the Swiftie thing or whatever that is. And then you could totally do the Burger King, right? Like if you go to each Burger King, and that should be a sponsored a sponsored thing, and very cool. And the other piece of that is that from the store perspective or the brand perspective, if you are creating digital assets that are really fun to engage with, that's something that people have that you only create once, right? Like it's not the new collector item necessarily.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I was never the guy that played D&D. I had friends that did. And I think there's a lot of things there, Jyunmi, I couldn't speak to it. I really couldn't. But like, I know how much a lot of my friends in college and stuff, they would have D&D parties and things like that. Or, I was going to say another game, Magic the Gathering. I had friends that were really big into that. By the way, those original cards are apparently worth a lot of money. I remember my friends having them back in the day, and they're like, some of them are super valuable. But anyway, my point is, like, there's a lot of obviously IP here that could get in on this, both from the Burger King side of it, but also IP Disney and Marvel and Star Wars. And so like you could choose your own adventure, but it could be in an IP that's paid for, like a Marvel or a Star Wars. And then once you layer over it with like geolocation, I do think that starts to become something really, really inventive. What I actually geek out on this the most, though, is that you could truly have a one-of-one adventure with your family in the car that couldn't really be duplicated if you tried, because of the way kids are, you know, or whoever, like, which way are we going to go? Whatever, like left, you got to take the left path, you know, and the other kids, like the brothers, like, you know, no way. That's where the, you know, the whatever it is in Star Wars is going to be. You can't go that way. You know, the force is to the right, blah, blah, blah. But if it's bringing in these ideas, and anyway, just this whole, to get back to it, because I don't want to get off topic, it's just one of those fun ideas that you go, all the ways that AI can help and hurt. I agree, Andy. This is actually a way for families actually to come together to have some really fun interactive experiences. And yeah, I do attribute it to a car ride, but it could easily be a walk in your neighborhood. It could easily be a new city and going out and doing a, you know, like they have the walking tours. Europe is phenomenal for those, by the way. I'm sure big cities like DC do it too, but Europe, there was a lot of free ones and you just paid by tip, which was awesome because you could just pay based on what you wanted. I think it was called free walking tours. And we did those a lot back in 2017. And so you like, oh, I want a walking tour that both helps my children understand the significance of the historical building, but I want to make it fun for them in a way that's going to get them engaged and want to walk down the street and go 2 blocks to the left. And so there's just a lot here. Car rides, historical. And I think there's just something that's going to bring people and family together. Date nights, friends getting together, you know, your bar tours. It can go on and on and on, I think, you know?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that there's a distinction between the family with young enough children who are going to be involved in the car ride and doing it in that context. And then the question is, how do we find something that can replace user-generated content in the sort of the next level of human development, which is, let's call it teenage, right? You know, young teenagers all the way to college age. In that span where we're actually training these generations to be focused on user-generated content in their cohort, how do we shift it from just observing and commenting on what other people are posting to something that's more interactive and engaging and actually drives them to be in face-to-face interactions? I really hope that there's something that we can come up with, because that's $1 billion idea, not a, I mean, there's a lot of people, including
trademark it. Got another $1 billion idea. Trademark it. We've moved on from million. By the way, the chat has made it known that we have gone on a tangent, and they're calling it out, which I love. And then Greg said, "Did he just say bar tours?" I was thinking about pub crawl, but I probably had Star Wars in my head as well, Craig. And I came out of my mouth came bar tours. But I meant
Star Wars, Star Tours, bar tours, pub crawls.
That's right. It's branded IP Star Wars, but with bars, with a pub crawl, with some historical significance, so you feel better as an adult about the fact that you're just drinking from location to location. Because then you come home to your significant other and go, "Sure, babe, I drank a beer, you know, at every location I went to." But I also learned about the resistance at this field during the Civil War and how that helped the Union. And so I'm smarter for doing this bar Star Tour war pub crawl.
Right. I mean, and I learned an incredible amount of history from playing Sid Meier's Civilization. Right. But okay, so to help us get back onto topic for our chat friends, what we were just talking about is a method of associative memory. And speaking about that is a study that came out about energy and memory, and they're calling it a new neural network paradigm. So from UC Santa Barbara, their researchers have come up with what they are calling a input-driven plasticity model, right? So just a little background. One of the current models that are used is called the Hopfield model. And it generally explains how associative memory connects you to these concepts, and your neural network memories aren't stored in a single cell. It's mapped across different areas of your brain and things like that. So what this IDP model tries to do is it tries to clarify with a mechanism what they're calling gradual integration of past and new information, which guides the memory retrieval process to the correct memory. So instead of what attention systems, which is what all the LLMs, transformers, are what all the LLMs are currently based off of, they don't have this associative memory process. And so this IDP model that they're creating hopes to answer for how neural networks and associative memory works in animals, humans, biologic beings, and hopefully fill the gap or cross the gap with how transformer systems work, so that you can use this as a framework to build new frameworks or build new models off of that, filling that gap. So it's pretty heady. Need more time to dive into the full study and the paper, absolutely, but it is I think it is significant when we're talking about new ways that we're imagining or creating intelligence models, right? We're all focused on transformers now, but this kind of speaks to Yann LeCun. This kind of
very interesting
global thing. Yeah.
Going back to the early days of AI implementations for various applications in the intelligence community, there was a company all the way back to the early 2000s that I was familiar with at the time, called Saffron Technologies, which was an associative memory system. So it was basically taking lots of unstructured data and putting it into a statistically based association of each of the data elements that were being put into it. And that's the way our brain works. The more associations you make with a single recollection, the more recallable it is. It has to have a cluster, in effect, for that sort of thing. So I'm very interested in that article that you're talking about, and what that development is, to see just how that advances the reasoning and sort of retention and memory capabilities of advancing AI models. Can you give us a link to that? Thanks. I'll appreciate that. Now I have a procedural question here for the technical managers of the Daily AI Show. Mm-hmm. In just 7 minutes, the live stream is going to happen with OpenAI. Now, we typically will do a live stream of our observations while listening to that and share it with our audience. Can we just roll right into that in 7 minutes?
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, I think we totally can.
Okay, is Greg's dream coming true?
All right, we're gonna break the 1 hour mark, folks.
But
yes,
stick around.
I will say this just because Karl was right. The name of it is a research preview of Codex in ChatGPT. So they're giving you, they're introducing a demo. It says Greg Brockman, Jerry Tworik, Joshua Ma, Hanson Wong, Theobald, no clue, Katie, Andrea, and Andre, sure, all the people. They're going to introduce and demo Codex and ChatGPT. That's literally what's in the description of the YouTube video. And yes, it starts at 5 minutes and 44 seconds. So
okay, so we're gonna continue chatting away until we get there, and then we'll make the transition. But before we even chat, I just want to say to everybody who's been watching all the way through to this 54-minute mark on today's show, thank you very much for sticking with us. And I want to just give you guidance to some resources that are available. You can find at thedailyAIshow.com. You can find a link there to sign up for our newsletter, which comes out every Sunday morning. and is carefully curated to give you more and more information about the subjects that we've discussed that week, and news that we weren't able to cover actually on the show. And then in addition, there is a community that we've developed. It's a Slack community, and you can find that at thedailyAIshowcommunity.com. If you go to that, you'll be able to access the Daily AI Show community and join there. You'll see dozens and dozens of people interacting every day on these topics, focused on AI and various channels of specific interest. So I invite all of you to try that out. And there are also some interesting personal educational resources in there that you can access. So check it out. And all right, with that, let's find something to talk about for the next 3 minutes. Beth.
So the paper that Jyunmi was talking about reminds me of the Sakana continuous thinking machines that we talked about on Wednesday, in the idea that that created relationships between nodes, I think, in the in the neural network that were stronger when they were when they were given an opportunity to spend more time in deepening that in deepening that relationship, if my memory is correct. But very cool. This feels a little like maybe it's one of those places where things get discovered or created that are very similar but happen in different parts of the world, right? Like
Great.
many
Right.
breakthroughs.
Right.
So Beth, we're going to make this transition to the live stream sharing of the live stream from OpenAI. Is there anything technical that you need support with in order to do that, or are we ready to just bring that up on the screen?
We are just about ready to bring it up. I have it shared in a
Great.
yeah, here we go. Let's that. No. It has to be a tab. Sorry.
What?
I am just yeah. I like Jyunmi, do you want to say aloha so that we have it in the thing? I don't know what we're gonna do with the
So yeah, like Andy said, thank you for joining us. All of the fun stuff that we do, and aloha.
Aloha.
Excellent.
End of transcript. New transcript.
Brian, this is where you cut.
Okay, Brian is saying he tried to leave, but it made it appear that he was going to end the broadcast. So he's leaving himself in the green room there.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Hey, there we go.
Okay, we're shifting now to the last couple of minutes of waiting. It's just 2 minutes away. The live stream from OpenAI of their codex. Jyunmi, you want to explain what codex means in this context?
So I believe it is their implementation of wasn't that the former name? Oh, maybe was it? It was the former name of windsurf.
I think it is a thing.
It was
Codium.
Codium.
Oh, that was Codium. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah. Let's see if we can pull up some supplementary material here.
Imagine, if you would, in a space very, very far away, there are people who are playing a choose your own adventure game separately in their cars, but they meet up in a field. Yeah, I'm just like,
oh, okay. Well, they did release an updated article on their codex, and they're saying that they've improved their version of Codex. It's their AI system that translates natural language to code. And they are releasing it through API, their API in private beta starting today. So I think that's gonna be the main part of the discussion for this this live stream.
So how we'll be very curious to see how Codex, which sounds based on what you just read, to be their own internal development of a text to code agent, how that fits in with their windsurf acquisition, formerly known as Codium, which is exactly that. Is this actually a release of some work that they've done behind the scenes, as we were speculating earlier today? That is coordination between the the Codium / windsurf code and OpenAI's platform, maybe taking advantage of 4.1 to augment the reasoning capabilities of the coding agent,
Right.
or is it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Here we go.
Can you hear?
Software engineering is changing, and by the end of 2025, it's going to look fundamentally different. In 2021, we announced our first model that we called Codex. This was the first time that we've really demonstrated what we would now call vibe coding. Just a couple weeks ago, we released Codex CLI, which is a local agent that runs on your laptop in your own terminal. You're able to pair with and interact with in a synchronous fashion. Today, we're going to take a step towards where we think software engineering is going, and we are releasing a new system, which is a remote software agent that can run many tasks in parallel. We call this system, in the grand tradition of OpenAI naming, Codex. The thing that is exciting about Codex is that it runs with your repository, your environment on OpenAI compute. So you're able to run many, many copies of it. So you're able to do many tasks in parallel, fire them off, come back to them later, which is something that we'll be showing you today. We're rolling this out to ChatGPT for Pro, Enterprise, and Teams users starting today. And we will be following up with Plus and EDU in the future. Codex is powered by a new model that we call Codex 1. This is our best coding model to date. We've taken O3 and we've optimized it for not just the benchmarks, but really for the kind of code that people actually want to merge into their code base. So thinking about comments, thinking about extraneous changes, thinking about the style, so that it's something that actually really accelerates people's work. And so to show you this system, which we're so excited to share with you, we have many members of the Codex team.
Hey, I'm Hanson. I'm one of the members of the Codex research team.
I'm Josh, and I'm an engineer on the Codex team.
And I'm Thibaut, and I built code agents and the infrastructure to power them. I'm going to be jumping right into a demo. So normally, you would have to connect your GitHub account. I've already done that for myself. And here I'm going to be selecting my repo. I have selected an open source repo, the preparedness repo, which contains some of our frontier evals made by the amazing preparedness team that we have here. And this is relevant, like frontier evals are really about agents. So I'm just going to be using that environment. And then I'm greeted with 3 tasks that we believe are good to get started with on any repo. The first one is an ask task, which just asks the code agent, Codex, to explain the code base to a newcomer, explain the general structure. The second one is a code task, which asks to find and fix a bug somewhere in the repo. Most of the repos, as you all know, have bugs. So let's see if the Codex agent can find one. I did not put any bugs in there. This is code that we work with every day. And so we're going to be showing 2 repos today. One is the preparedness repo, and the other one is the Codex CLI one. And the final one is one that I'm really excited about, where I ask it to go through the code base and not just explore the code base, but also come up with proactive task suggestions that it could be doing on its own. So let's start those. Now we have 3 Codex agents working on these tasks concurrently, just in the background. And what I'm also going to do is, one of my favorites is find as many typos and grammar mistakes as you can and fix them. I think this didn't matter. Let's see if it understands also that my instructions as I make typos. And I have scheduled a task just before this, before we were going to jump on this, where I asked something quite interesting to the Codex agent. I ask it about one of my goals. I say, my code base I want it to be maintainable and bug-free. Read through the code, propose some tasks that would help with this goal, and don't overemphasize on to-dos. To-dos are everywhere in code bases. Those I know about. I want novel things. And so the Codex agent went through the code base, and in its little environment, as we're going to show you, it found out about multiple things. Let's have a look. One of them here looks like we are having mutable defaults as arguments. Let's have Codex fix that.
Definitely fix that.
So let's schedule that. Correct variable spelling. I believe this will get fixed as part of the other task, but let's schedule that anyway. And then here, there's like a little consistency about how we set timeouts. One time we set it to 120, another time we set it to 60. This codex agent here has proposed a task for itself. So we are delegating the delegation here, which blows my mind every time. And I'm just going to say make it 120. I think this is like the right timeout here. And let's have it code out for us. And then let's jump into maybe this task here and see the codex agent at work. So this isn't running on my laptop here. What exactly is going on here, and like how does this work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Devo. So as evidence from just seeing all these tasks launch in parallel, we now need new agentic coding infrastructure for this world where agents need not only their own GPUs, but also a couple of CPUs. So this runs on OpenAI's compute infrastructure. It's actually, in fact, the same infrastructure we use for our reinforcement learning, and which means, fortunately, even ahead of this launch, it's been battle tested on the large-scale training runs that we do. And crucially, it's also consistent between what the agency is during training and what the agency is later in production. So each of these tasks runs in its own micro VM sandbox, own file system, CPU, memory, network policy, and the agent has free reign within it, right? So the agent has learned how to use all your POSIX commands like grep, sed, knows how to run linting, formatting, and obviously it likes to write and execute a whole bunch of code.
Yeah, one thing that I really love about this interface is just how lightweight it makes it to spin up tasks, right? It's just your task left and right. And I think that really makes it a big difference for how you use it.
I think it's a lot of powerful infrastructure, and like the web interface makes it nice to interface with it, but I think it's also a lot more configurable.
Yeah, so each task runs in what we call environment, essentially more or less a repo, but with environment variables, secrets, and setup scripts configured so that you can customize the runtime to more fully unlock the agent's capabilities. When we worked with early alpha testers, we found that you get really big early wins by installing something as simple as a linter or a formatter. And we actually now install a lot of those by default. And of course, our power users have all their test dependencies set up. For OpenAI's internal environments, we have even pre-commit hooks set up. So as the agent's coding, it's actually committing, seeing what the commit hooks say. Really similar to actually my own dev environment.
That sounds really exciting. Maybe let's watch it work. And we're going to jump to an environment that we have fully configured, like the Codex CLI, and let's demo something cool with it.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite use cases for Codex is its ability to find and resolve complex issues. So even leading up to this launch, I think Codex actually found and fixed a couple of critical bugs in our code. But here we're looking at the Codex CLI, which Thibaut and I have worked on. So we've got a bug report from a user here. Basically, when they have file names with special characters, the diff command in the CLI shows up with an error message. And so one of the things we've trained our agents to do is not just like address these issues, but also we've introduced this concept of an agent's MD file. So we know for developers it's extremely important to provide steerability and instruction to the model. And so the first thing we'll see it do here, it'll actually take a look at the agent's MD file in the repository. And so here we've provided some instructions about the layout of the repository. You can see one of the special instructions here, we've asked it to print some ASCII art to the terminal. I think, does that look like a cat to you guys?
It is.
It's a different cat every time.
It passes my cat test.
Yeah, pretty good. And then I think we also saw above that basically we've also told it, like here's the TypeScript part of the repo in the Codex CLI, and along with some instructions about how to run tests here, which is pretty important for the agent. So one of the cool things about the way we train these models with end-to-end reinforcement learning, they not just write code, but they also know how to navigate the code base and even reproduce the issues. So here, it's written a little script for itself. So you can see it's similar to us. I don't know about you guys, but I love to use print debugging.
Never.
That's something we see emergent kind of as part of the RL training. It actually wrote a little script here to reproduce the issue. It's like written a file actually that matches the user's description. And it's actually able to execute the code to actually verify that the issue's able to be reproduced.
It's displaying a lot of complex behavior that is very similar to how we all work. How do we teach the agent to do that?
Yeah, I think so. We have a lot of these kinds of tasks in training. We use end-to-end reinforcement learning to actually like verify that it completes the entire cycle from writing code to running tests, and then we verify that that it actually is able to complete the tasks and satisfy, for example, both style checks and programmatic checks, and many other things. And then we can see that, on evaluations like Sweetbench, this results in state-of-the-art performance. So it's actually, we can see here it's actually found the issue, and it's actually writing a test for itself now so we can see that it's verifying its work for us. And it's almost done here. So it's actually, now it's even running linters to verify that the code is matching our style expectations.
And I saw it refer back to its agents.md here.
Yeah, exactly. So as part of the agents.md, you can provide detailed guidelines on, for example, like commit messages and PR messages and how exactly you want your code to be structured.
It looks like it's preparing files for commit.
Yeah, I think it's almost done. So just within, like the time that we spent talking, this change probably would have taken me, like at least 30 minutes or even hours to debug, and just in a moment, I think we'll see the final PR.
And the other thing is you could do this from your phone.
Exactly. Yeah, it looks like it's done with the PR. How's this look to you, Tiva?
Let's have a look. It's kind of tricky to review code so fast here, but one of the things here is that it did add a test. It's a repro test for the issue that we mentioned. So this seems to match here. And also what gives me confidence is that it actually ran this test. And there's like a little proof here, which we'll talk about later, where I gain a lot of confidence here that this test is actually passing. So I would just go and like push and create a PR here. But now that we have a whole bunch more tasks to have completed, what do you think, Greg?
I mean, I think this is magic. I'm definitely feeling the AGI here. Thank you all. And I think that what this system, in my mind, shows is that we're moving beyond thinking of our AI systems as just language models, right? That we're really building systems around them. So it's not just about the core AI intelligence. It's really about what tools it has access to, the environment that it is able to operate within, the kinds of sort of real world, conditions that it's been trained to be exposed to. It's starting to feel much more like the interface that we're going to see for a real AGI. Still much more to build, but it's starting to feel like it has the right form factor. And so here to tell you more about how we build the system are more members of the team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andre. I work on research and systems for reinforcement learning and coding agents.
I'm Katie. I'm on the research team here.
I'm Jerry. I also work on research here. If we look back at the history, we've been working on large language models that code for many years already. The first codex models we have released that powered GitHub Copilot and was little more than a smart autocomplete. And I think they have started a revolution of AI-powered coding that we really see take off today. Since then, we've worked on a lot of things. We've improved every layer of our pre-training stack to make our models really, really great at all kinds of programming tasks. At the moment GPT-4 was released, it was by far the best programming model in the world. We've also constantly iterated on our post-training recipe to make the models in ChatGPT really great at answering users' programming-related questions. Every day, millions of users use ChatGPT to accelerate their work. However, working with LLMs on a programming-related projects still feels pretty clunky. It does require a lot of hand-holding and context switching. I believe the current paradigm of scaling up reinforcement learning finally can take us to the place where we can automate larger chunks of work, where our models can work on, where we can tell them what we want to do, not necessarily how, and they can work for extended period of time on that task for a user on a real production code base. Even more importantly, the infrastructure that we are opening up for it is perfectly scalable. It doesn't run on your laptop, it runs on the cloud. At the single push of a button, you can spin up 1 agent, 10 agents, or 10,000 agents. It's an on-demand AI-powered force multiplier. And you are seeing really great results with it internally.
Cool. So I get to do the part of the demo that is probably the most unlucky, where I'm not going to kick off any tasks, but I am going to take a look at the tasks that Thibaut, Hansen, and Josh kicked off and hope that they're good. And I think this is actually kind of reflection of where engineering work has moved over the past few years, where a lot of my time now is spent reviewing code rather than writing it. And in that sense, it becomes even more important for our models to be very aligned with what we want. So I will talk you through how we train these models with alignment in mind as we look through a couple of these tasks. So let's click back into the one that Thibaut kicked off here. So I think there's 3 key parts here. On the right, we have the actual code output produced by the model. When we look at code and when you review code, you might look for things like, like having sensible changes, doing exactly what the PR description said, and not having extra changes. You don't want extra comments littered throughout your code. This is feedback that we've heard about our models before. And so something that we really focused on was like having good code quality and style so that code is easier to review. The other thing that we really focused on here was interpretability and verifiable outputs. So on the left side here, we have a model-generated summary of exactly what it did. Right here, it added an import for this function. It tells you what it's doing and like why it's doing it. And it shows you in this citation view exactly the code that it was referencing when it's talking about what it did. And then in the testing section here, the model actually ran the test that it was told to run in the agents.md file. But beyond just actually running the test, the model actually reports whether the test passed or failed. And in this case, you can see exactly where in the work log the test was run, and you can see and verify that it succeeded. Let's take a look at one more task. OK, so here, there's another task that was done in the preparedness repo, where I can take a look over this model output, and it might pass like the smell test to me initially. But I can see from the model's testing output here that it actually didn't manage to pass the test. And so I'm looking here, and it looks like it might be something with like a missing dependency in the environment, maybe Pedantic's not installed. And so this PR might be something that I check back out to my computer and rerun the tests locally. And maybe if I see that this is valuable, this is something I can go back to my environment configuration and reinstall. And ultimately, I think we find Codex to be like as trustworthy, if not more trustworthy, than our own coworkers. I don't have this kind of access to like what Andre did on any given day in terms of like the logs or the actual test outputs. And I think as we move towards this world where AI writes more and more code, this kind of verifiability is going to be really important.
So I'm super excited to share this with all of you today. I've been working on this for more than 2 years, actually a lot of that time with Jerry. It's been a real blast. And we've been using this internally and seeing a lot of really magical moments start to appear. We're sharing this with you today because we think this does represent a glimpse into the future of how software engineering is done. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how I use the product. So in the lead up to this launch, I've ended up doing a lot of coordination work. I haven't had as much time for coding as I may be used to, or as much as I maybe ideally would like.
Sorry.
Maybe Greg can empathize with that a little bit. And so if I'm like reviewing someone else's code or reading through Slack or playing with the product just to make sure that it's developing well, sometimes I'll have an idea of like a code change I might like to make, a change in the product or some refactor, and I'll just kick it off in Codex. It takes like 30 seconds. It's a very lightweight thing to do, and then I'll go back to Slack or wherever I am. And then later I'll come back, and the task is sitting there, and it's done. And sometimes it's a small task. It's like a simple string change. Sometimes I was ambitious, and I put in a request for like a bigger refactor or some sort of feature. And this by no means works all the time. This is a research preview. We think it's still early days. But sometimes it's like a multi-hundred line diff, and I open it, and I start reading through it, and I'm like, wow, this actually looks like it's correct. And I read through what the model did. Maybe the model ran some tests. Maybe those tests failed, and the model fixed the test failure. I look on the left, and all the little test results are green. And I'm like, this change actually looks really good. Let me open a PR. Maybe I'll send it to a colleague for review. Maybe they'll approve it, and we'll merge it, and it lands in the code base. And then I take a step back, and I realized I just landed like a non-trivial change, like a large change, often in our code base, and that branch never even hit my laptop. It was just something that happened completely through this interaction with an async delegation to one of these agents. And when that works, it's really a magical moment, and it's really amazing. And when I talk to other colleagues, they're using the product too, and they're using it in different ways. And they're having magical moments and magical interactions with it of their own. And you can see some of those stories in the videos that we're linking from the blog associated with this release. So that's all very exciting to see. But what I'm most excited about is to share this with all of you today and see what you all do with it.
One of the things that I find really exciting about how Codex works is it has very non-human strengths and weaknesses. And so it really means that you get much more out of it if you start thinking of it as not just a static tool that you just use, like, you know, just without having to build expertise. But if you really optimize your code base around what it can do, you start, like, honestly, most of what Codex benefits from is just what is good software engineering practices in terms of modular code bases with good tests and things like that. That you're able to just move so fast, and we've seen that happen internally with many people at OpenAI. We are releasing this today to ChatGPT enterprise teams and pro users. We're going to have very generous rate limits. We're going to start out without any additional pricing. Over time, as we start to get some feedback and some sense of how people are using it, we'll introduce more rate limits. We'll be rolling out to Plus and EDU users that we'll be thinking about if there's pricing for how to get additional queries. In general, we're just so excited to see how people use it because we've seen every single person at OpenAI uses Codex differently. Now, we're not nearly at the end of this journey. We're very much at the beginning. That we're going to continue to improve Codex. We're going to make it be integrated into far more systems, like be there in your issue tracker, release an API so that you can have it automatically be integrated into your CI. So if there's a CI error, you don't have to fix it anymore, that Codex takes care of it. We also are continuing to develop Codex CLI, which again is a local agent that runs on your laptop. We're releasing a mini model today, and we're also going to be releasing sign-in with ChatGPT to make it easier to get up and running. Now, if you think about it, there's two different form factors that we've talked about. There's the local, synchronous, on your computer version, but there's also what Codex is of an asynchronous in the cloud, runs on its own computer. And we think that the future is going to be these two systems coming together. Right? What you really want is you want a remote coworker with its own computer, but who can also look over your shoulder. And so you're there typing away, you're working on some change, you're like, I want to go to lunch. Codex, can you finish this? It just takes it over seamlessly and runs it in the cloud. Or if you have a question about something or you want to pull down a change because your dependency isn't installed or something like that, it all just moves around totally seamlessly. So it's a coworker, it's a intern that you can delegate to, it's a mentor, it's a pair programmer, and all of these at once. And so our goal really is to help accelerate the useful work that is done to help it be so there's more software engineers in the world, so that there's more programming that is done that is useful and able to move forward the world. So we're just so excited to see what you're going to do with Codex. Thank you all.
Okay, well, definitely what they advertised. It was developer focused, coder focused. Not sure about the if you wanted to learn learn to be a coder part, though. What I mean, the initial impressions that I got was that this is, and they did reference like the GitHub Copilot when it was first introduced. Mm-hmm. This is a code helper, unless in this iteration, right? You can talk with it and ask for it to do things and build out stuff and whatnot, but it's not. It shouldn't be confused with the promise or hype of a no-code programming agent, right?
Like Lovable.
Like Lovable. That this is not where it is at right now. This is for people who already understand code or are coders themselves, and they can then push to their infrastructure, right? There's a direct connect to pushing it to GitHub and those kinds of things. The last little bit they talked about is having both the local iteration and the cloud iteration. Mm-hmm. I think that was mainly to say, hey, these systems coexist. They're not just going to be you develop this way and you develop that way and whatnot. Also to say, hey, all the new features are going to be available to you if you use, the CLI. I found it really interesting that they are finding clear alternate ways to use their data center infrastructure, right? By running micro VMs to support running this in an own virtual machine or its own virtual environment, so that it can spin those up, run what it needs to, and then spin them down. And so I think that little tidbit there is one of the directions that they'll definitely go in, because if you can instantly, like they said, spin up as many of these different coding agents or these coding helpers to do your work in parallel or in tandem and then spin them down, then it's only a matter of how much time and energy is being used at the time. And so it's not having to have dedicated hardware. So I think that'll be good in the grand sense. I am always wary when they don't release stuff to Plus at the same time, because people who use Enterprise and Pro are not necessarily the people who use Plus, but
which is why I think I think two things. This really is a developer update. They were clear when like they did not say, cool, we have new toys for you. They said something we think devs will enjoy, right? Like they were trying to make that. And I think that when they release it to Plus, everybody hits it all at once. It's like, 1, 2, 3, go, let's all do it. And then there are a bunch of people who are like, I don't know what this does. This doesn't help me at all. Right. So I feel like by limiting it to Pro and Enterprise and Teams, you might actually have both a smaller group of people, but the people that this is targeted toward might actually be the people who use it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a little pushback, because the biggest issue that I had between Pro and Plus, or when they introduced Pro, is it's such a significant increase. It takes it out of a lot of people's hands.
Yes.
And I always want to see more independence for the individual builder or maker, right? So the $20 entry makes sense. I guess the clear path is, if you really want to build stuff in the AI space, you're going to go API using MCP and A2A, kind of things, where you're just accessing the resources as you need it and not living within the ecosystem. Because Pro seems like it's a real big bid for all of your professional life now lives in ChatGPT, right? Through that interface. Whereas with at the Plus level, I'm experimenting with your features, right, as you bring them out. So if that's the main goal of the Plus, then you release it at the same time because you want to experiment, but you keep the limits low. I totally get that. But I think we're digressing away from the announcement itself. Yeah.
So Greg said at the very end what I thought were money words. It is a mentor, an intern. You can use it as a mentor, an intern, something, and pair programmer. What was the third role that it could play for you? So my sense of that is you could use it as something that knows more about your code than you do, right? Or can see it differently. You can use it as something that you're going to delegate. You have instructions and it's going to do them. You can use it as like, I want you to take over, right? This is as far as I've gotten it. Don't work for 24 all the time. I'm going to take a break and go, but I would like this process to still continue, so I'm going to hand it off to you. And I guess actually a little bit of the looking over your shoulder while you're doing it. Maybe that was the mentor. Maybe that's another role of like a senior.
Right.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to kind of address one of the questions that Greg put out there in terms of what are the real world applications, or what is the impact right now. And so what I saw immediately is, here is the new process. Here is the new platform and process that we can use to go through our daily stand-ups, our daily bug fixes, our tracking, because that's one of the things that they put on there. It's like, oh, what's our task list? What are we doing? And they still use the point system for that too. So it's kind of a just translating. I guess it could just be a grab for programmers' tool sets, right? And environments, and trying to grab them and put them into ChatGPT. So maybe you need less Jira, and maybe you need less, different IDEs to do your development. You can just do it on ChatGPT because it's so easy to just work together on our repo through this tool.
So it's interesting because when you look at the comparisons between Cursor and Windsurf, Windsurf has the reputation and the marketing to say this is better for beginners. And so they've incorporated Windsurf into their program and put stuff out that said, this is not at all for beginners, right? This is not for you right now. So I find that interesting. It of course is a massive system that they brought into their program, and are creating usability for their levels of customers, and that's great. Those users. The one thing that I find disconcerting, and we had a little bit of a conversation in the chat, is when the people behind the software, the code, the systems, seem surprised that they work, right? Like wow, I mean, this, like, it worked, and that's a little bit of magic, right? And like, that's funny, and we can do a lot of stuff, but I also think that, like, we need to understand that context when we're using the systems, because we're assuming we paid for it, you put it out, it achieves a certain level, which is not surprise at function correctly, right? Like,
okay, so this might be the difference in thinking or baseline mental starting point for between tech and programming and that space and the average experience in the world, right? So 1 second. sorry about that. And so here's something that I learned from an old coworkers, like in my early days of tech support. None of it's supposed to work. That's the reality. None of it is supposed to work. We make it work, right? So even if it's building out hardware, or building out the infrastructure, or building out the software that supports it, or as we move from more hardware or more software and things like that, none of it's supposed to work. The internet's not supposed to work. None of that's supposed to work. We make it work for enough time, right? We build upon what we've learned before to make it work more reliably. But errors and faults and finding bugs and all that kind of stuff, that is expected. That's supposed to happen, right? So like, I know it's confusing, but
I don't even know
remember,
what to say to that.
It's all supposed to be iterative, right? There's a reason why they push security updates and software updates for your operating system, because the code base is so huge. There are multitudes of various data and interactions that cannot be foreseen, and something comes up. That's a bug, right? You can't foresee that all possible permutations are fixed or predestined or anything like that. Those kinds of, we have a thing that we think will work, And from our testing, because there's only so much testing you can do on something before you release it, right? It's never finished. It will always be improved. That's why there's versioning, right? That's why these repos always have something either being added or something being fixed. Someone finds something. This is not a perfect thing from the beginning. It just works enough. So I think,
okay.
yeah. So I think that's the mental disconnect for most people is, oh, I bought this thing. Well, it's not finished. You know, it's any real, I shouldn't say real, any director really looks at their film or whatnot and says, I wish I could do a little more here.
Yeah.
I could reach, right? It's that same kind of thing. You know, I think it's that artistic crossover. It's like, oh, that could be better.
So,
or I could work on that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, I got you there. It's the supposed to work. It's like, no. We should still strive, right? We're striving to make it work. It should be
Yeah,
as
definitely.
perfect as we can get. So that makes
Yeah.
sense to me. Particularly from an improvisational standpoint, because improv works as long as it reaches the bar of like this was good enough. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it's like, wow, you guys really hung on there and finished. That's awesome. You stuck the landing. But if it's over a certain level of bar, we say that that's a successful thing, even though there are lots of things that, because it was improvised, could be changed the very next time, that it will never happen again because it's improv. Yeah, okay. Are there last wrap ups we want to do?
So I think I always like ending up on like a future site. What do we want to see next, right?
Mhm.
So they're naming it Codex 1. All right, so they had Codex, now they're calling it Codex 1. Maybe we will have a decent naming convention from OpenAI, and the next one will be Codex 2. You know, let's hope they go along those lines. But in a more serious note, what I'm really hoping is, if this is the baseline helper and it proves to be extremely accurate and helps out the coding folks, you know, at that level, then can this be the engine, right, or the kernel of the no code version, right? The windsurf integration, you know, the ChatGPT's new Lovable, right? But beyond that, even the current iterations like Lovable, Replit, you know, and integrating combo tools and things like that, they're not there. My definition of no code is no knowledge, right? When you talk about no code, you can talk about like Make as an automation tool. That's not no code. That is, you still need to understand code to use all the various modules. You absolutely need to do that. You need to know how all of those works and how they're the terms and used, you know, and understanding what they mean, you know, having variables, having, you know, those kinds of or arguments, you know, you need to know those that terminology. So whenever you see anything no code, for me, it's like, no, it's not true no code. For no code, for me, is like no knowledge. Like I shouldn't need to know anything about it and just say, I want this goal or this result, you make it. And that's no code. So I'm hoping that what we'll see in Codex 2 or some combo iteration of taking Codex as the central engine and, you know, wrapping it in a better interface or a better conversational agent, you know, true coding agent and things like that. That's what we'll eventually get. I know it's aiming high, but that's kind of what we really want from AI, right? We want anybody can make anything for any reason without needing to know the basis of that.
Yeah, I would say that's true. For this, they did show not being specific, but saying I don't want to see the, I don't remember what they called them, but like the to-do sections. I don't want to talk about any of the things that we already know about. Go and give me novel bugs or whatever. And it did do that without a ton of instruction, but that isn't necessarily, I mean, did do that without any instruction, right? And then it popped it up and it had an option for you to fix that, right? that interface, I would love to see some of that interface as an option with engaging with ChatGPT, right? I mean, for the for y'all saw it on the last Be About It show, I think, for the app that I was developing so that I could do the corrections in the transcript. That's what I'm looking for. Fix that. Fix that. Yes. No, leave that one alone. Jimmy Fallon is not correct. Jimmy Fallon is just fine. Doesn't even change to Jimmy Fallon. So I found that kind of interesting. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about it was that I personally could set up multiple functions and see them in a queue about their status. And right now, if you're going to ask ChatGPT to do multiple things, you have to have multiple windows. So I thought those were really interesting. And
Yeah, I totally agree. The UI elements are definitely understated, but for those who spend a lot of time in ChatGPT, I think there's a lot of things they can integrate. I
Yeah.
love that ability to bring up the preview. You know, like you said, it for their check. I'm like, can I have that in all of my UI? I mean, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
They weren't. I don't remember them being entirely clear beyond their example of pushing the PR, you know, to the GitHub repo. But what are all the ways of export, right?
Mhm.
Can I get it packaged and, you know, and then downloaded? Can I get it wrapped into an executable, right? Can I have it collected and put into an executable and walk away with it and run it on my own system? You know, those kinds of things. And what about different development environments? Can I have my Apple version? Can I have, you know, can I have my can I make my DMGs? Can I make my EXEs? Can I do it all there and then just have it as a standalone app? Or can I connect it to my own infrastructure and just send it out to where that's living?
So that's interesting because if you can, even if you can't there, if you could pull it into ChatGPT can wrap it in all of those things that you just asked, right? ChatGPT just added that you could create a PDF of something. But if I want a markdown document or a CSV or a docx, right? Those are things I can ask for, and it runs its Python. It builds a Python script to code it in that format and give me a download link. Right? So now we're back around to, is this a function that you've built in, or have you built in the ability to build a function to do what I'm asking?
And do I need an infrastructure? I said that for chat because they were making fun of it. But can they build the infrastructure since they can spin up virtual machines, right, to run everything? Can they build the data center part of it, the cloud part of it, or connected to that, so that I can just run it through ChatGPT? Can this be an improvement to what am I thinking? No, oh man, I'm totally blanking. Custom GPT. There you go.
Awesome.
Can we use this as a custom GPT to run our own system, you know, our own application, our own web app, right? The web app only gets spun up when there's a request. That means it only runs in the data center and the calculations that are made, the processing, when it's a request. That's only requested when an agent goes to make the request of the app. The agent only requests it when our agent interacts with that agent. And this goes back to the whole websites don't need to exist until someone asks for it or wants to see it. Right. Oh, hello, personal agent. I found about this company. Oh, okay, cool. Build the web app. All right, cool. And then when you're done, it spins back down. And that way we don't have to have an elaborate interconnected system. It all live in ChatGPT as a custom GPT.
Ooh,
maybe, or at least that first step, right?
Yeah. I think it's hilarious that this new thing is is exciting and also kind of narrow while also being wide. And somehow we've come back around to wait, is this like, could this be the long awaited custom GPT update? Please, please, please. Right. So yeah. Okay. That covers what I'm looking for. Are we ready to take it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you really like seeing our faces all day long today, come back at 1 p.m. Pacific and hop onto the Sci-Fi AI channel. And of course, you know, if you want to continue the conversation, jump into our Slack, and you can get there by going to dailyaishowcommunity.com, and that can lead you up there. And then if you want to know about our newsletter or follow any additional follow-ups to any show that you might miss, check out the dailyAIshow.com, and you can sign up for that.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, my friend. I will see you later. Hope to see all you lovely people in the chat later as well, talking about brain-computer interfaces. And yeah, Jyunmi, shall we go?
Aloha.
All right, this seems very much an after show. That's hilarious. Thanks everybody. We're really gonna close it this time. Bye.
Aloha.